All right, it is time once again for our monthly visit with Megan Basham, the Daily Wire's own entertainment reporter who has been covering the culture for 15 years, which on the right is actually a lifetime. Let's have somebody who actually knows something about the culture. So we're always glad to talk to her. Megan, it's good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So we've been talking on the show, and you have been writing about the question of President Zelensky's flagrant manhood, the fact that that we're watching this guy basically single-handedly, defend his country and call on the West to step up against a tyrant. And it's getting this reaction, it has gotten this reaction online of people starting to say, oh, yeah, I remember that's what a man looks like. First of all, tell us how that came up. How did that get into the conversation?
Well, it's been sort of funny to me to watch the reaction to Zelensky because, here is this culture that we have right now where everyone has been talking about toxic masculinity, particularly amongst conservatives. They've been talking about cults of toughness as a very negative thing. And they've been talking about, I've heard references to drinking liberal tears jokes as sort of a negative example of
Oh, come on.
masculine aggression. I know, no fun at all.
Yeah.
So you're hearing a lot of stuff like this. And then Zelensky comes onto the stage, and all of these sort of progressive, even progressive women are reacting to him like he just said rock auto on the world stage. All of them are suddenly writing these essays about the crushes they have on him, how attractive they find him. And it's fascinating that once you removed the virtues of masculinity, the display of masculinity from our own cultural debate, the reaction was completely different. They're all very attracted to it. They find it very appealing. And so that was really interesting to me because he has been very savvy about how he has used social media. And one of the sort of turns that I heard from the progressives who have been warning about masculinity is that, well, what he's doing is actually being masculine. He's not performing masculinity. My take was that that's not actually true. He is performing it. He's very savvy in putting it on social media and making sure that it's reaching Western ears and eyes via the press. So that was kind of the argument of going, no, you have to perform masculinity in somewhat public ways in order for people to value it. So it's been very fascinating to watch this argument and debate take place.
That is a really interesting point because, in some ways, the left is always saying, oh, this is a social construction or masculinity and femininity or performance. And there is some truth to that, but you are performing it in order to bring it into the world and in order to bring it into being. Is there a way in which Christianity has become in many churches almost entirely female? And I sometimes think in The Merchant of Venice that Shakespeare has Portia dress up as a man to defend the quality of mercy, because he's saying in some ways that Christianity elevates female values, more gentle values. Does the Christian culture have a problem with masculinity?
I think you have to look at the fact who's attending churches and say that, yeah, it does. I think we have a problem of male leadership. We're getting to this place where so many women feel comfortable in churches and so many men feel that it's off-putting. That's not the history of Martin Luther. This is not the sort of muscular, robust, argumentative, masculine Christianity that, nails the 95 Theses to the door. And I feel like that is what a lot of men are starting to feel. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but you're hearing a lot of young men starting to talk about that, and they're talking about it very vigorously. And it felt like these articles, these essays are a way to put them down and put them back into their corner, particularly from a lot of, I won't call them progressive, but I will say progressive light women within church leadership circles. I particularly highlighted a professor and religious news columnist who has said, these things are very toxic. They're creating a rugged warrior Jesus. There's a particular book that all of these people have been citing, and it's a book called Jesus and John Wayne. And it argues that conservatives,
two of my heroes, I don't
right,
yeah.
They're citing it as a very negative thing, that conservative Christians have bought into this vision of Christianity that is very John Wayne and wants a strong man. Now, I think you can go, okay, we don't want a belligerent Jesus, but at the same time, we don't want to cut off those parts of him that were very willing to confront Pharisees, for example. I mean, you don't get a soft, gentle tone explicitly and exclusively from Jesus throughout the Gospels. And that's kind of what they're claiming. And when you look at it, you go, here's a figure who was perfectly willing, in defense of those he came to save, to say, you nest of vipers, you whitewashed tombs. That's not exactly a gentle tone.
Yeah, I can't find a single place in the gospel where Jesus says a nice thing, where he's actually nice. I mean, he is he is rock solid. He stands up to the Roman Empire. He actually dies and brings the Roman Empire down. So he's not a nice guy. He's just a guy who believes. I mean, love is not always a nice thing. Love is sometimes requires a tremendous amount of strength to express in a corrupt world. And I think that's a ridiculous take on Jesus, that he's not manly. He may be above manhood and woman in some ways, but he's certainly a tough guy when it comes to facing people who have the power to kill him. All of this stuff feeds into the culture, and I feel that there's a natural connection to this conversation and the appearance of Zelensky and this kind of sudden idea that, war, I always see that bumper sticker, war is not the answer. And I always think, well, what's the question? Because suddenly you get the Democrats are, calling for war. There's a connection between this and another article you were writing about, which is a subject that really interests me, which is the Disney Corporation. Now, the Disney Corporation has just gotten into a kerfuffle because they're in Florida. I mean, Disneyland is in Florida. And in Florida, Brian DeSantis is trying to stop teachers from grooming children for sexual perversion. I mean, that's basically what's going on. He's got this thing that the left calls the Don't Say Gay bill, but it is really an anti-groomer bill to stop teachers from talking to 6 and 7-year-olds about their sexuality, which no one should be doing. So what happened to Disney in this case?
Well, it's kind of a complicated story because we tend to look at these as being very simple rollouts of events. And in this case, it wasn't. In the past, Disney has been pretty activist, particularly under former chief CEO Bob Iger, but he retired last year and a new chief is in, and that man's name is Bob Chapek. Well, Bob Chapek is known for being nonpartisan. He's known for wanting business to stick to business. He didn't come up through the very leftist studio system. He came up through parks and consumer products. So he had a different way of doing things, and he made it very clear he did not want Disney to get involved in this skirmish. Well, left-wing activists in Disney did what they did, and they immediately ran to the press. They immediately put out statements all over social media and began pressuring him. At that point, former CEO Bob Iger also put a statement on social media that made it very clear that he would have been happy to put out a statement condemning the bill on behalf of Disney. So all of this put this new leadership in a really awkward position. And at first, it seemed like they were going to stand strong. But then what happened was that shareholders began speaking up as well. And you started to see not just the bad press, but you started to see activist groups like the Human Rights Campaign, like GLAAD, say, we're going to start scoring you politically. And they knew that that was going to harm their investor class, and they were going to start hearing from them. So Bob Iger very quickly shifted gears. He apologized. He tried to donate money to the Human Rights Campaign, who, in a big grandstanding show said, we're not going to take your dirty Disney money. And he essentially said, I'm going to try to talk to Ron DeSantis about this. Now, in this case, Ron DeSantis did the right thing and told Disney to pound sand, but that hasn't always been the case. And so this is an issue that conservatives are going to have to confront, that the left has moved on from winning elections. They've even moved on from trying to influence entertainment content from within. We've seen that. You look at Disney and you look at the LGBT content that has started to appear in a lot of their films and television shows, many of it, much of it for children. And I think that's what's really disturbing to a lot of people. At the same time they are doing that, they're starting to move on in a way that goes, we don't really worry about that anymore. We don't care about empowering girls anymore. Now, the girl power movement became very big in the Disney movies. We saw that with the princess movies. But I think that is all kind of an old conversation. And it's time for us to go, wow, this whole illustration of what happened in Florida tells us that they're not messing around with that anymore. They're now going directly to, we are going to try to influence legislation.
Wow. The thing is that they show up at these board meetings and we don't. The conservatives don't show up and pressure Disney. So if they're going to cave, they're going to cave to the left. One of the things that, and by the way, we should point out that the hypocrisy here is deep because the LGBT content that appears in Disney stuff is taken out when they go to China and when they send their movies to China, which they shouldn't be doing in the first place. So it's a completely amoral action that they're taking. It has nothing to do with virtue, actual virtue. But Walt Disney said, "Whatever success I have," this is a quote from Walt Disney, "whatever success I've had in bringing clean, informative entertainment to people of all ages, I attribute in great part to my congregational upbringing and my lifelong habit of prayer." There's no way that the current Disney Corporation can turn to the spirit of Walt Disney and say that we are continuing in that tradition. How did this happen? Why did they lose that track of bringing clean entertainment to America and get off in this LGBT thing? I mean, it seems a very deep part now of Disney culture is gay culture.
Well, and I think a part of that is just simply that you have much more committed activists on the left than the right. I think on the left, you have people who that is their religion. That is what they are committed to doing in life. And on the right, you have people who are conservative and they care about politics, but they care more about raising their families, building businesses. There's just much more interest in living life. It's not your faith. It's not your religion. And you look at Disney over the years and you go, GLAAD in particular has had a deep commitment to getting involved in the studio system. At this point, they have consulting arrangements with all of these studios and networks where they're invited to come in and consult on scripts, to consult on casting. And so they've been doing all this. And that's why I say they've been doing this for years. So they have already sort of achieved so much of what they wanted to achieve by getting involved with all of these studios and networks. That's why they're moving on to going, now how do we leverage our relationships with these businesses, these companies, and turn them into political organizations overtly, not covertly through our content, but overtly through forcing them to pressure politicians, pressure other businesses, pressure school board, pressure everyone. I mean, that's what's been really interesting is that we're turning into this really bizarre sort of corporate cronyism society rather than an elected democracy. So,
yeah. But,
anyway, and we can't make all and that's part of the problem with you said, Andrew, that we need to start using our influence as shareholders, our influence as investors. And that's really the key, because I go, we can't make all the companies. Jeremy Boring is trying, but we can't make every soda. We can't make, we're making razors, but at some point we go, we have to find another way to influence business.
Yeah, they have to know we're there. They have to know that we are also the audience. I mean, there's those old evangelicals, the Jerry Falwells and all that, who everybody cursed and said they were prudes and they were too stiff-backed, but they were saying that, the gays have an agenda and they're coming after our children. Clearly not true of all gays, but there is this segment of the gay population that is absolutely intent on reaching children and turning their heads around. As a mom, you take your kids to these. I mean, my daughter loves Disney princesses. When I would take her to Disney princess, but I was taking her to The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. They were good films. Has that changed when you take your kids to Disney movies now? Do you feel safe? Do you feel that maybe they're getting fed bad stuff?
No, I don't. And, it's funny because now you've gotten to this place where you go, I have to find resources. I have to find someone I can trust who has pre-screened this movie and is going to tell me what's in it. And not even just a general overview. I think there's a reason that with moms, some of these websites like Common Sense Media, Kids in Mind, that go into explicit detail. Okay, these two characters kiss. This character touches this character's backside. This is how many, quick lines of sexual references are in them. Because there's so much of it now in places you don't expect. I mean, you don't expect a gay pride parade from a preschool show, but that's what you're getting. You're getting it from Nickelodeon. You're getting from Disney Junior, which is for kids who aren't even in school yet. So yeah, no, you don't trust it at all. And that's really sad. And you have to think that Walt Disney wouldn't, feel great about where his company is today.
Well, I hope some of the moms who are showing up at these school boards will start showing up at these board meetings as well, because it really is sinister and and should be stopped. Megan Basham, you're doing great work. You really are. Your stuff, I'm reading all your stuff, and it's just a great cultural coverage, which I'm just thrilled to see because I think we need more of it. Anyway, we will talk again next month. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Like and subscribe for more great content, and subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.